Through a Scottish Prism, the programme that is unapologetically pro-Scottish independence and anti-Westminster rule. Everything we say here is viewed through a Scottish Prism. Brought to you by Barhead Boy.
Right. Well, welcome back, folks. We've got a lot of questions. We're going to get through them as quick as we can. We can be a wee bit brief so we can get to them and we'll get comments from yourselves. I'm trying to find where we can go here. Oh, here's one for you, Eva. We'll get into that first. We'll do these first one. And this is from, again, Jeff Hoggery. How many questions you put in? Good man, thank you. Should votes for Not My Parliament be counted as part of the total pro-independence vote?
Yes.
They certainly will be by us, but I don't know if they will be by the returning officers. And here's another question for you, Eva. You ready? What will you do if Alba puts someone up against you?
I'm still going to win.
Right. Now, here we go. Does the panel think that the SNP will ever embrace a Scotland United approach and work with other independence parties or independence candidates?
I don't think at the moment the current leadership have the bandwidth to understand that that's the way you deliver the central issue that people believe in, which is independence. Until the leadership of the SNP changes, I think they will, as they are at the moment, they will continually surprise their own membership by the lack of progress. And I think, unfortunately, as we said in answer to other questions, that the bloody nose is unfortunately, as it was in 1979, the bloody nose is required for the party to take the party back again, because between 74 and 79 it was the leadership of the party in Westminster that destroyed the Scottish National Party, required it to be rebuilt through the 80s because of their behaviour, and that's exactly what's happened here, except it was in concert with a Scottish National Party government in Edinburgh. So yes, there's a difference between now and 1979, but in reality the circumstance remains the same, because as Phil pointed out, and some of us tend to forget, the Scottish government, the Scottish Parliament, is a sub-parliament, a regional parliament of the United Kingdom of Great Britain and Northern Ireland. And that's the way it's visualised and seen from outside, and unfortunately not seen by those on the inside. So, yeah, I have to say, I don't believe they will understand Scotland United, because the maintenance of their own position and the maintenance of their own jobs and their friends' jobs is dependent entirely on, as Alan said earlier as well, the money they get from the British state to maintain themselves. And we're in the same spiral with the Scottish National Party as the Labour Party found themselves in when they rejected and reduced their central principle, which was the creation of a socialist Britain.
Going back to 1992, there was another Scotland United campaign that was up and running. Members here had to take the SNP, screaming and shouting to join that campaign, to work with others to get a Scottish Parliament. Unfortunately, none of us are left in the SNP, and I don't think there's anybody strong enough in the SNP to fight for leadership to get them to change their mind. But this is not just about the SNP and Scotland United. Alba have to make a choice. There are now 3 people who have declared that they will be standing as an independent candidate. They have said that they will not stand against one. I'm now challenging them to come out and openly support the independent candidates for Perth and Kinross and Alloway and Grangemouth. And to use Alloway and Grangemouth as a local campaign is the wrong campaign to go. Because the Grangemouth refinery is a national issue. And that must be fought in every single constituency of the length and breadth of Scotland. And I believe that Alba have a choice, especially in Alloway and Galway, Alloway and Grangemouth, to make a choice whether they are standing for short money or whether they are standing for the rights of the Scottish people to become independent. They should now declare their support for Eva and their support for Sally.
This question came from Arthur. Martin, and he just wants to know if the hate monster has pronouns.
Ask his mum.
Phil, do you think the SNP will ever join the Scottish United?
It's exactly the same answer. Under the current leadership, no, because they have been compromised. They are now controlled not by the people, but by those who have infiltrated the SNP and know how to manipulate and play people. It's not new. It's been around for a very, very long time. And Scotland United is the spirit of 2014. It's the Yes movement. It doesn't matter what we call it. The Yes movement, again, is what we need. That was the unification that we needed. We understood it was very, very simple. Independence, nothing less. And it doesn't matter where you come from, what political party you belong to. If you understand that we, the people of Scotland who live and work here, are the best people to govern our own futures and make the right decisions for us, then that is good enough to get you in the club. You're in the club. That's what unified is, and we need to capture that again. And the problem is they're not serving the people of Scotland, they're serving their own ends, and that's the tragedy here.
Eva?
Sometimes when I'm not angry with them, I feel quite sorry for the leadership of the SNP, because I think they lack a spine as well as at times a brain. And if we are to have a Scotland United campaign, then it's incumbent upon Sally and me, and I would suggest also Angus Brendan McNeill, Kenny McCaskill, Neil Hanvey, Alex Salmond, Tasmina Ahmed Sheikh, to extend a hand of friendship and support to the SNP and to suggest to them that they're doing themselves and their country a very major disservice by refusing to have a Scotland United campaign. History may not look kindly on me and Sally this time next year. We might lose, we might be accused of dividing the independence vote, but what history will say of Sally and of me is that we had the courage of our convictions because we were standing for independence and for country before party. If that is what the members and the supporters of the SNP want their MPs and their candidates to do, then they should tell them that, and they should require them to stand for country, to forget party allegiances, and to make peace with the people who have been their enemies from time to time. You don't win an independence campaign by falling out with everybody that you don't like, and you don't win an independence campaign by living in your own wee bubble. You win an independence campaign by finding common cause and by agreeing that the priority is the future destiny of our country and of her people. The priority is not petty party politics. It is because of petty party politics that people in Scotland are hungry, they are cold, they are unemployed, they are skint, they are afraid. So today of all days, the Ides of March, as we are recording this, let's put hostilities behind us and say Scotland United will never be defeated.
Yeah. I'm going to try and put some of these questions together, but I'll direct this right to you, Phil, because it's your definitely your thing. If we lose the Grangemouth oil refinery, how will this impact Scotland's energy crisis and economy?
Well, the energy crisis is completely man-made. We have enough energy to be self-sustainable. If we were independent, when we become independent, you will not be paying this. You're paying about 3 times more than you need to for energy right now. We shouldn't have to pay that. A refinery, I would replace Grangemouth. It's old one I've built. I've worked on quite a few refineries. To build one, you're talking about tens of billions. To adjust or add a new process, you're talking in the billions. You know, we can keep Grangemouth going and retain it, but it's going to need tens of billions to make it function properly. The best one in Britain right now is the Humber refinery, which I worked on down in the Humber estuary. But Grangemouth is in the Freeport area. Coincidence? And who's also got interest in this but the owner of Manchester United and the owner of currently Venios and the scene up with the Chinese. So no, this is not a good scene. What we're looking at here is the energy can be renewable, sustainable, clean or green. We understand what renewable, sustainable and clean energy is. Green is just being used as a slogan now. And what we really need to be doing is investing investing in energy, research and development. We've got 2 shovel-ready pumped storage facilities in Scotland. If you've got mountains and water, when the wind blows, you pump the water back up and it comes back down through gravity and it generates energy. Norway's been doing this. We can look after ourselves. We have more than enough energy. There's minimum 50, 60 years of known reservoirs of reserves of energy, of oil and gas, and all the new energy will be off the west coast of Scotland primarily. And we're talking about beyond west of Shetland, where I've worked on some of the biggest projects in the world, both of them 5 billion plus. Clare Ridge, the replacement of an FPSO, the Schiehallion, was, in my budget, was 1.5 billion. 1.5 billion was my budget for the subsea umbilicals, risers and flow lines. We have got such a wealth. We're going to make 30 million a day on that, BP. Where is this? Is it coming to Dundee? Is it coming to anywhere near here? And Aberdeen's getting the crumbs of it. And they were happy with that, and they shut up and they became unionists because of what they're getting off the table. Look at Aberdeen now. No, so the energy crisis we face is because we're part of a society that steals from its own as people. And while we continue to allow others to govern us and others to steal our resources, it belongs to the people of Scotland. It's Scotland's oil, remember that one? Yeah. Well, that's when we need to get back on, and we shouldn't be frightened of this. Oil and gas are here for the foreseeable, and if you really want to be serious about energy, you've got to look at nuclear, or do what the Norwegians are doing and look at pumped storage, and there's other ways of doing it. And we need to invest in research and development. There's so many things we could be doing, but no, we will continue to lose ground to Norway and the rest of the world. And we used to run all the offshore. We were advanced, we were the best. Sadly not the case, and we continue to be in decline, and we will do until we take control of our own destiny and our own industry. That's the only way we can make this work.
Just up a point on what Phil said. You know, Ineos, or Man United, that small football team in Manchester, he owns one half, the other half's owned by the Chinese. Who's got billions? But why hasn't HUMSA sent a delegation to Beijing to say, step in, we need tens of billions. You can build a new refinery and you can own it 100%. That's what I certainly would be doing. We'd be bringing the Chinese money in. To me, as far as I know, I don't think they've sent anyone to China, have they? No, I don't think so. Which brings me on nicely to free ports. And this is from Angie. Is the UK government stripping Scotland's assets via the proposed free ports, and will this make it harder for us in Scotland to be independent?
Well, the simple answer to that, I think, appears to be yes, it will make it more difficult for us. But I don't think our government really understands. I don't think the Scottish government fully appreciates and understands what's happening here. The only one who expressed any concerns, namely Ivan McKee, was removed from the negotiations because the British Civil Service told the Scottish government that he was being difficult. And all he was doing was seeking detail. What do they actually mean? I mean, I'm going to live in a free port. The Edinburgh free port, the Firth of Forth free port, as it should really be called, is absolutely extraordinary in its size, but what it encapsulates is even more extraordinary. The refinery, Edinburgh Airport, the bio quarter at the Royal Infirmary in the south side of Edinburgh, the gas cracking plant at Mossmoran, the rusting nuclear-powered submarines lying in Rosyth, the ferry port at Rosyth. All of these things encapsulated in a free port. All of those, in all of those areas are potential areas for economic growth and, more importantly, for research and development and export. We are handing over a huge section of our economy to, well, in the case of the Edinburgh free port, it will be 50% owned by the Civil Service Pension Fund of Canada. You know, There's a certain irony in that, you know, we sent all these Scots to Canada and now Canada's coming back and taking us for a ride. I find it extraordinary, but I think at the moment the campaign is to try and educate people about it. And don't continually be told, oh, these are scare stories, these are scare stories. Because they will stay scare stories that may turn out to be true until our government and the Freeport authorities tell us what they're actually going to do. All of this is proceeding under a strange mist, a fog, that's meant to keep us away from understanding what is going on. So of course those of us that are moderately politically engaged will look at the worst possible case scenario. But then again, when you're dealing with Freeports and you look at things like Honduras's case against the Freeport they have in Honduras, then you think to yourself, well, maybe we, the scaremongers, are actually right, and we won't know that until each and every one of us has sat down with our MP, MSP and our councillors and said, what do you know about this and what does it mean for our children's future? Because it's not about us. All of this has implications that are 30, 50, 60, 70 years down the line, and it needs to be clear, transparent. We need to be told what the hell is going on.
In January this year, I did a midweek Prism with Lloyd, Andy Brown, who's a councillor in Teesside, and Alf Baird. And Councillor Brown told us the horror stories of what's going on in Teesside. And I would recommend, if you go to the Barhead Boyd website and just put in Freeports, it'll come up. But all the promises, all the glittery stuff, not happening. And it's just an absolute rip-off, in my humble opinion. Alan, what do you think of the Freeport? Will it help us or hinder us?
Well, it certainly will not help us. And Lloyd's right. I mean, they keep bringing in these policies that are so outrageous, nobody believes them. Remember the GRR, when we were telling people what it meant, and they were all going, don't be silly. Never be like that. We were proved right. And now we're going to be proved right over the Freeports. I mean, Freeports is introducing slave labour back into this country. They're exempt from so many, many laws, and it's unacceptable. We have to protect our people and other employees that come into this country to work. We have to protect them with a minimum wage, with trade union rights. I mean, I'm a little bit more radical when it comes to these type of things. And I go back to what Tommy Sheridan once said. If somebody comes into your house and steals your TV, you don't pay them to get it back. If we get independence, we put in our constitution that Freeports are illegal and will not be tolerated in Scotland, and we face up to the international community saying, bring it on.
Freeport, as the future Member of Parliament for Grangemouth, you will have a Freeport.
I went to the Freeports meeting that Izzy and Salvo arranged in Dunfermline a few weeks ago, and there was one elected politician there. He was a councillor from Fife, and he explained at the end of the meeting that he knew far more then than he had known about Freeports when he arrived, because the Fife Council were not providing councillors with information about the implication of Freeport status. Other than that particular man, there's only one other elected politician that's attended any of these Freeports meetings, and that was Neil Hanvey of Alba. There's a Freeports meeting in Inverness next Saturday. You'll get details online, but Izzy, who's here, will tell you a bit more about it. There are going to be several councillors at that meeting, and none of them know much about Freeports either when they're looking at the Cromarty Firth Freeport. So the difficulty here is not just about the general public being denied information. There is clearly a deliberate policy on the part of the Scottish and Westminster governments to limit information that's being given to elected politicians about the nature and the implications of Freeports. That's because they are bad news. It's because, as Alan has said, the employees who work in the Freeports area will have diminished terms and conditions in comparison to out with Freeports, and there are horror stories coming out of the Teesside port to do with not simply deregulation or preferential treatment of businesses or reduced rates and all that sort of stuff, but there's other problems such as alleged fairly substantial drug dealing operations and the like. So Freeports are not good news for the general public, They're good news for profiteers and corporate interests, and again another attempt to bleed Scotland dry, take our resources, our land, and spend the money down south or abroad.
Just for the people who are watching, the people in the room, but say the Freeport's public meeting is on Saturday the 23rd in the Spectrum Centre in Inverness from 1 o'clock till 3 o'clock. And any, particularly in Inverness area who are watching this, you should go along and get yourself educated on this and at least hear the other side of the argument, the thing that you're not being told. So I'll just repeat that again for you all. It's in the Saturday the 23rd in the Spectrum Centre, Inverness, 1 o'clock till 3 o'clock. Now the clock is beginning to click on, and I'm under strict instructions from Techie. But we have a question here at the front. Where's Hazel? At the bar, I was going to say. No, here she is.
Who's it?
Who says she's been at the bar? Come on.
I've got a question, but anyhow. Do I have to stand up?
Do what you like, whatever you feel comfortable with.
I'm not going to stand. I've not got a question for you actually. I just want to give you some more information that most of you might not be aware of. When we first heard about the Freeports, we were told the Levelling Up Fund would come from Westminster. We know, thanks to Angus Brendan McNeill, that the Levelling Up Fund is actually coming out of Scottish budget. So, Freeports that we don't want, that we don't need, we're paying for anyway. They've been imposed on us and we're having to pay for them. So that money that should be spent on poverty, housing, everything else that we need is going into Freeports, and it's disgusting. And that's what
well, as I say, we're going to get, this will be our sort of, trying to get them, see if I can pull them all into one sort of question. Yeah, it's quite difficult. How do we've been hoodwinked. How does the Scottish Government bring the best practice and expertise to share our country without being fleeced or hoodwinked with PPI contracts? EJ, how do we get the best bang for our bucks? And that's from Alan Black.
That's very straightforward. We control our own economy, we control all our natural resources, and we free the power, imagination and ingenuity of our people. And that can only happen when our flag, the Saltire, is directly between the flags of Saudi Arabia and Senegal outside the United Nations building in New York.
Phil, how do you think we get best value for money?
Revolution, brother, revolution.
Alan?
Yeah, I mean, independence is the only way we could solve it. Take control of our own nation. And if people want to make businesses invest in services, you use the taxation system. You don't go cap in hand borrowing money from them and paying it back at extortionate rates.
Just as people have noticed, we don't know if we've taken note of what happened in the Irish referendum last week. The pushback from the Irish, God bless them. Dundee is a radical city, and the women won't wish are meeting tomorrow at the Caird Hall. And you've got a paper, but I haven't got a time here. What time? 12 noon, high noon at the Caird Hall. Women won't wish.
You're about free speech and you're against the hate crime bill. You've got to stand up for women.
There you go. Right, here is the last question we're going to cover tonight. We've got some comments maybe before we go. And it says, the legislative priorities of the Scottish Government appear to reject the cultural mores and sensitivities of the middle class Scotland. Legislative priorities. They exclude the needs of the working class of Scotland. Might we see a pushback against this and return to more class-based politics? What do you think, Lloyd? Class-based politics?
You can't ignore it, and you can't pretend the class doesn't have a major effect. We live in the United Kingdom. It's in the title. There is a class. They're called the ruling class. They have a king. Class is not dead, no matter how many times John Major or any other idiot English politician said it. It's not. It's very firmly part of the structure of the United Kingdom of Great Britain and Northern Ireland. And yes, we need to address those issues, because what we found in 2014 were the people with the greatest passion for the freedom of our country are the people who are at the bottom of the ladder, commonly known as the working class. Therein lies the means by which we will deliver our country to independence. It's by the motivation and mobilisation of working people, but you can only do that when you offer them something. And in 2014 we offered them a future, and it's been taken away from them. And until we do offer them a future again, and we actively work in those areas, people are not ignorant of politics. They just don't see it's for them. And why do they see it's not for them? Because they look at the benches in Westminster and they look at the benches in Holyrood, and all they see is middle class people telling them what's good for them. Middle class people who haven't taken the time out to actually go and ask people what they want. We have a whole industry in this country now of poverty, a poverty industry. We've now got a developing equality industry. We now have a developing inclusivity industry. Until you rid yourselves of the industry, then you'll never rid yourself of poverty, because it's middle class people, keeping middle class people in jobs, that maintains poverty in the communities of our country. We need to address this, and this is not to reject all of those who would consider themselves middle class, who have the knowledge and the understanding that without those at the bottom being brought up with us, everybody goes down.
Just from what Lloyd said, David Clegg's very close friend, Liz Lloyd, has just been given a position, not from David Clegg, in the poverty business. Eva, what do you think?
I really detest the fact that under this Scottish Government, when you hear equality, diversity and inclusion, it means only one thing. When what it ought to mean is equality, diversity and inclusion should mean what it says on the tin, that we create a country where everybody is equal, where diversity is celebrated and where everyone is included and people are not excluded, particularly as the result of poverty and its impact. And what the Scottish Government should have done and could have done in the course of the last 10 years, instead of pursuing the GRR and the hate crime bill and all the rest of it, what they ought to have done was create a national energy company, a national house building corporation. They should have been speaking to people on the streets and in the schemes about what they need to bring them out of poverty. They should be listening to the Leanne Tervitts of this world and the Darren McGarveys, the folk who understand what it's like. They could come to Clackmannanshire, unlike John Nicholson, and actually speak to the people in the schemes in the estates of Clackmannanshire who do suffer from grinding poverty, who get slagged off because they spend money on cigarettes, or because they go to McDonald's for a Happy Meal, or because they spend some money getting their eyebrows or their false nails done. Because the politicians that criticise folk that do these things by way of a small treat don't actually understand what poverty means. Leanne and I were at a meeting with Shirley Ann Somerville a few weeks ago when she was asked by Leanne to define poverty. What was it she said, Leanne?
She said it was not having enough money to survive and not being able to take your kids out for a day out. That was it. That was the definition of poverty from the Scottish Government Minister, within whose portfolio the eradication of poverty would lie, were that an aim of the current Scottish Government, which it clearly is not. So, I can't even remember if the question was, Shotty. If we're going to make Scotland a better place, we've got to start being radical, and we've got to pretend that Scotland is an unwon cause, because that's what it is. Yes. We need to give people hope and the understanding that because it is a wealthy country, because we do have resources that most other countries of the world would give their eye teeth for, we need to use those resources for the benefit of the people who live here. We can help other countries, particularly obviously the Middle East at the moment, but we need to look after ourselves. There are children not yet born in Scotland who, if they are born into a unionist country,
will never see their potential. They will never realise what they could have had. They will have shortened, reduced life expectancy. We are in a set of circumstances now where life expectancy in parts of Scotland, particularly in the West, has been reducing. And you know, in the 21st century, this is not acceptable. We've got a position where people are spending life savings and drawing down money from their pensions to pay for artificial hip and artificial knee joints because of hospital waiting lists. We lock up in prisons far more than we do than any other country does. There are backlogs of trials. We've spoken about the crumbling justice system. We know that Scotland is populated by people who are clever. We used to have an education system that was the envy of the world. We can have all that back again, but to do it we need to have economic power at our own hands, and we need to be governed by competent politicians who know that if they don't do the job they were elected to do, they will be booted out at the first opportunity.
Ladies, the clock definitely now has beaten us, and I want to thank you for all being here tonight. I want to thank you for your questions and for your participation, and I hope that we've answered some of your questions and you've found it informative at least, and then slightly enjoyable too. Thank you very much.
Through a Scottish Prism, the programme that is unapologetically pro-Scottish independence and anti-Westminster rule. Everything we say here is viewed through a Scottish prism. Brought to you by Barhead Boy.